They were out early one morning, panning in the stream for gold, surrounded by the rising mountains. Old prospector with a tale for two, he brushed around in the pan, and pointing out what lay within was ordinary sand. He began with his story about 20 years before, and a younger man who sought his fortune. With a tear or two he told of searching for his treasure, but making known the gold he sought was ordinary pleasure. There were years of doing without, and there were years of plenty. He started thinking that life was never steady, excepting when the bills came in and he had no money to pay. Whiskey had never tasted better ordinarily. Concluded his story as it filled the air with a laugh, saying how he found the Lord and Savior, and how he found the river of life by which his day unfolds, and pointing out what stands within is not ordinary gold, and pointing out what stands within is not ordinary gold. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Through His word we can see His wonders, signs and miracles of His love. We can return His love with devotion, standing on His word before all men. We are His beloved and His chosen, walking in this life renewed with peace. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. upon His promises. Through His Word we can see His wonders, signs and miracles of His love. We can return His love with devotion, standing on His word before all men. We are His beloved and His chosen, walking in this life renewed with peace. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Believe upon His promises.
All right, hello, I'm Mark Wallace. This is True North Studio, and today the topic is second chances. So today we're going to talk about second chances. Have you ever blown an opportunity? Have you ever failed at a diet or a job or a friendship or a marriage? Have you ever given up on a super important life goal, your dream, or your calling? Have you ever broken a promise to yourself, to your children, to your lover, or to God? Have you ever kept doing something you knew in your heart you should have stopped doing? Have you ever wished you never said that last stupid thing to the person you loved the most in your life and you cut them to the bone? Maybe you missed your shot at greatness, the bigs, the show. Did God ever call you to do something, but you decided to do something else? Actually, many of the Bible greats blew it far more than you can ever imagine, but they all rallied back. Like you, they all believed in a second chance. From shame to fame. Now, speaking of Bible greats, here are a few things they did before turning things around in their life, and maybe you can relate. Have you ever been to jail, committed murder, or lived the life of a prostitute? Were you ever sold into the slave trade, participated in human trafficking, pimped out your wife, or were you ever part of a notorious gang? Did you ever get stone cold drunk and pass out in front of your kids or steal someone else's wife? Have you ever committed suicide, quit on your calling, or suffered from erectile dysfunction? Well, besides ED, those are just a few of the shenanigans lived out by some of the Bible's greatest heroes, while at the same time they were doing amazing things for God. The good news is God already knew every mistake they would ever make, every failure, every fear, every time they settled for second best, and He still gave them a second shot. The Bible is filled with heroes and villains. Sometimes they're the same person. Many times they're the same person. I thank God for second chances because sometimes we don't do too well on our first try. Psalm 103:12 from The Voice. You see, God takes all our crimes, our seemingly inexhaustible sins, and removes them. As far as the east is from the west, He removes them from us. I love that verse. I need that verse. It's a pretty awesome second chance verse, but no chapter in the Bible illustrates one side of the second chance better than Hebrews chapter 11. This section of Scripture is often called the believer's Hall of Fame. But when you dig a little deeper, you'll find it's filled with flawed people like you and me. People who blew it royally, but got back up, grabbed a second chance, and excelled. God gave all these men and women another chance, and they did something with it. That's why they're even listed in Hebrews 11. Now, I need to point out that Hebrews 11 only posts the pretty Instagram, well-posed, selfie stick side of people's lives. It only shows the spectacular results of their believing. Hebrews 11 leaves out all the icky, messy, sticky, in-between details we wish to forget or hide. Today, we're going to see that even when we blow it, and we will, we can get back up and keep moving for God. The heroes of Hebrews 11 did. A second chance, used wisely, will take us from epic fails to epic tales. Let's take a look at a few Bible greats who graduated with honors from the School of Hard Knocks. Let's also take a peek at what most of them wish God never mentioned. Hebrews 11:4 tells us that God accepted Abel's sacrifice. That's Adam and Eve's second son. It doesn't show us that Abel was murdered by his brother just a short time later. Genesis 5 tells us about that crime scene. Hebrews 11:7 tells us that by building and supplying the ark, Noah saved the Christ line. It's good. It somehow leaves out the part where a couple of years after the flood, Noah got drunk and passed out in his vineyard in front of his kids. It also leaves out the part about the unnatural sexual abuse Noah and his wife suffered at the hands of their adult son Ham. Genesis 6 fills in those sordid details. Verse 8 through 12 tells us that Abraham and Sarah believed God and they had a child in their old age and they enjoyed the land of plenty that God promised them. But it doesn't mention that Abraham, to save his own skin, he sex trafficked his wife Sarah twice to local kings. Genesis 12 and 20 fill out that page in his little black book. Verse 20 says that God blessed Jacob and set him up for great things to come. However, it never mentioned that earlier in his life he disguised himself and tricked his elderly father into giving him the birthright and blessing that legally belonged to his older brother Esau. Genesis 27 exposes that fraud. Verse 22 of Hebrews 11 mentions the wealthy and powerful Joseph, who fed and saved his brothers during a deadly famine. It never tells us that those same brothers sold him into slavery when he was just a fresh-faced child. Nor does it mention his time in an Egyptian prison because he was falsely accused of rape. Genesis 37 and 41 pull those curtains back. Verses 24 through 29 speak highly about the many accomplishments of Moses, like freeing slaves and splitting the Red Sea, but it fails to mention his mom gave him up as an infant. Nor does it mention that he murdered an Egyptian in cold blood and buries him in a shallow grave in the sand and then fled the country for 40 years. Exodus 2 uncovers that crime. We'll discuss a few more of Moses' mistakes again in a few. Verse 31 talks about Rahab being a hero for God because she hid some Hebrew spies so Israel could take over her city and enter the promised land. It never mentions about her being a prostitute and a traitor to her own people. Joshua 2 and James 2 turn on that red light. Hebrews 11 verse 32 drops the name of a war hero named Barak. It never tells us that he refused to go into battle unless the prophetess Deborah, a girl, rode right next to him and she led the charge. Judges 4 shows us that citation. Verse 32 mentions Samson. We all know about his otherworldly strength. We may not remember that he really enjoyed his prostitutes and ended up getting himself, killing himself so he could take out even more enemy at the same time. Judges 16 unhides that little detail. Verse 32 of Hebrews 11 mentions Jiptak, who was a brilliant military leader in Israel. But it doesn't mention he was once such a bad teen, he was kicked out of his house and started one of the worst youth gangs in Israel. Judges 11 sends in that tip. Verse 30 also references King David, the giant slayer. but it seems to leave out the little part where David wanted a certain woman so badly that he had her husband killed in battle so he could have sex with her and steal that man's wife. 2 Samuel 12 pulls the covers off of that one. Hebrews 11 tells the pretty side, the perfect side, the mission accomplished side of their story. But if you dig just a tiny bit deeper, you can find out the other side, how they blew their first chance. These men and women used their second chances wisely. They went from shame to fame, and we can too. We've also been forgiven and gone on to do some spectacular things for God and His people. Like the people of Hebrews 11, we too have wisely used our second chances. I love the quote by John Wayne. "A man deserves a second chance, but keep an eye on him." Imagine if God inspired someone to write down all your highlights and lowlights. What if God published all the good and bad things you've done for all the world to see? Now, my lowlight reel and highlight might read something like this. You know Mark is a pretty nice, encouraging guy and a kind of good teacher of God's Word. Most of you didn't know that he left home at 16 for no good reason. His long red hair flowed down to his belt. He cut a swath of trouble across the Lone Star State and ended up in not a few Texas jails. Once he even broke out of a jail in a town called Watauga. He had revolvers and shotguns poked in his ribs multiple times, usually by the police, but not always. He was hated because of the way he looked and the things that he did. When he finally turned 17, he turned on to God. He cut his hair, quit his wild friends, moved back home, and over a few days read the Bible cover to cover twice. He went on to finish high school, went to college, looked diligently for a group to live the Word with, found one, got married to the beautiful Josephine, and he's never stopped looking for Christians who want to live the Word and walk with the power of God like he first read about in Acts. See, we all have a story. None of us have gone through life unscathed. I think that nothing is as exciting as watching a comeback. Here's a quote. "We can't run out of second chances, only time." Robin Jones Gunn. The reason the Bible greats have both their good and bad deeds written in the Word of God is to show us that we too can go from worst to first, because God is still a God of second chances. Regrets. I've had a few. Have you ever said to yourself, I wonder what I really could have done if I'd just been more disciplined and tried just a little harder? What if? What if I'd finished college and got that degree? What if I'd forgiven them way back then? What if I controlled my temper that time? See, I went to visit a man in a medium security prison. And we went to a public area in some sort of day room. And I sat on one side of the cold green metal table, and he sat on the other. A guard was in the corner fiddling with his baton, keeping an eye out. Well, I asked the inmate what he was doing in there, and he cleared his throat, and he said, I caught my girlfriend in bed with another man, so I shot her, dead. He then said, Mark, I've never even got a parking ticket before. I've never done anything wrong in my life before this. I said, well, this is a hell of a way to start. He wanted to pray with me for a better life outside this place and how to do his time on the inside. You know, he wanted to give himself a second chance. Now, some decisions we make may interrupt our lives for a minute, but that doesn't mean our lives are over. That doesn't mean God is done with us. Moses went through something similar. Watch this, Exodus 2:11 from the CEV. After Moses had grown up, he went out where his own people were hard at work, and he saw an Egyptian beating one of them, beating one of his people. Moses looked around to see if anyone was watching. Then he killed the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand. When Moses went out the next day, he saw two Hebrews fighting. So he went to the man who started the fight and asked, why are you beating up one of your own people? The man answered, who put you in charge of us and made you our judge? Are you planning to kill me like you killed that Egyptian guy? Well, this frightened Moses because he was sure the people must have found out what had happened. When the king heard what Moses had done, he wanted to kill him. But Moses escaped and went to the land of Midian. Moses ran away about 300 miles and somehow stayed hidden from the Egyptians for 40 years. I guess this sort of became his self-imposed life sentence. He stayed out of sight and away from his own people for 4 decades. Was it too late for Moses? Was this 40-year delay too long? Was he too old now? It wasn't until Moses was a full 80 years old before he decided to finally finish what God called him to do back when he was a boyish 40. Did killing someone? Did that murder stop his second chance? Did hiding out in a foreign country for 40 years blow his opportunity? Not hardly. Probably nobody listening to this live stream or reading this teaching has ever committed murder. But Moses did, and God still gave him a second chance. Some people regret not having children. This is sort of a change of subject, but we're talking about regrets. Some people regret not having children when they were young. Well, didn't Elizabeth have baby John the Baptist well past her normal childbearing years? Sure. Here's an angel speaking to Mary, Luke chapter 1, 36. And behold, thy cousin Elizabeth, she hath also conceived a child in her old age. And this is the 6th month with her, who was called barren. That means everybody thought she was never going to have a kid. Verse 37, for with God, nothing shall be impossible. I love that. With God, nothing is impossible. What about our other regrets? Quote, a meta-analysis of 11 regret ranking studies revealed that the top 6 biggest regrets in life center on, in descending order, education, career, romance, parenting, the self, and leisure. That's from the National Institute of Health. What do you wish you had done with your one precious life? What have you done that you think is so bad that God's hand of blessing is off your life? Is it drugs? Career before family? Did you waste all your money? What regrets have stopped you in your tracks? What self-loathing? What disappointments? What negative self-talk freezes you and shuts you down? Folks, your time has not run out. Your hourglass of blessing is still has a long way to go before it drops its last grain of sand. Until you take your last breath, there is always a second chance. But it's good to remember that even after death, there's still a second chance for us. Other people held me back. How often do we blame our failures on other people? I could have been a contender if I only had a better coach. I wouldn't have lost my temper if she didn't say those mean things to me. I should have had that position, but so-and-so stole it from me. Or like my friend in prison said, I would never have killed her if she wasn't cheating on me. Remember, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Our fights are always set up and manipulated by some type of spirit action. Ephesians 6:2. We must play by a different set of rules, people. Now get a load of this. Peter must have been really pissed off at one of the apostles for him to saunter up to Jesus right after a great teaching and totally off topic ask this question. Matthew 18:21. Then came Peter to him and said, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Till 7 times? Jesus saith unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. Well, this was not what Peter was expecting Jesus to say. He wanted Jesus to handle something that he needed to take care of himself. This may be hard to fathom, but this interchange between Jesus and Peter, we're given the answer on how often we should extend forgiveness, how often we should give second chances to others. Now, I got to put a disclaimer in here. There's times where you got to cut somebody off. I get that, but that's not what we're really talking about today. Jesus is not telling us to keep a numerical track of each and every time we've been wronged by that person until we get to 490. That's 7 times 7 equals 490, okay? Nor is Jesus telling us that we, or Peter, should keep bringing it up to them 490 times. Do you like that? That's Bush League stuff. That's the way of the world. That's the accuser. Jesus knew how this talking bad about others plays out. Matthew 7, verse 1 from the Message. Don't pick on people, jump on their failures, criticize their faults, unless, of course, you want the same treatment. That critical spirit, it has a way of boomeranging. My wife calls that Christian karma. Christian karma. It's the law of reciprocity in reverse. People are going to wrong you. They are going to throw it in your face. They are going to make you feel small or unwanted. But we don't go there in our mind or in our words. We don't swim in their pity pool. We live at a higher level. We know where the attack is really coming from. That will take the stinger out of the bee. Oh, and by the way, don't use the word as a weapon against someone because you're angry or hurt. Didn't the devil use scripture to attack Jesus? You're better than that. You're better than that. Stop blaming others for your problems. Just learn from your mistakes. Better yourself and keep moving. Life is short. Peter, get over it. You know where the attack's really coming from. Give him a second chance. Or maybe 490 chances and counting. The accuser. Now here's an important point that can affect you noticing your second chances. This is kind of a big deal. The more you understand this next topic, the clearer you'll see your true path to abundance. This is not easy to stomach. It's not fair, but it's real. When you grasp this, you will begin to see the abundance that God has previously hidden for you in plain sight. You and I have to play by a different set of rules. We must train ourselves to see what's really behind people's words, their body language, their smirks, expressions, and eyebrow flashes. Many times we need a second chance because we allowed someone's words to affect our actions. We join in on the gossip. We complain about our boss, and like a bad spy novel, we slowly get turned to the dark side. When our family just came back to the States from Japan, we moved to Texas. And I met a kid in junior high who could already rebuild an automobile engine at 14. In fact, I bought my first car from him when I was only 15, a blue Chevy Caprice Custom with a big block 396 engine. Think 5 miles a gallon. On its best day. He taught me how to develop black and white pictures in the school's dark room. The kid was amazing, but he was a bit of an outcast. All the other kids in school asked me why I hung out with Wally, and they told me he was strange. He was a geek. He was a weirdo. Well, I still ache inside for giving in to the group pressure and distancing myself from that kid. That decision still haunts me today. I decided then and there that I would never do that again to anybody. See, we teach our kids that sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. But is that really the case? Do words really hurt us? Does what the internet trolls say about your kids or you on social media affect you? The world we live in is controlled by words. It always has been. It's controlled by words. Revelation 12:10. For the accuser of our brethren, Satan, is cast down, which accused them before our God night and day. Like it or not, you're being accused, blamed, criticized, squealed on day and all night. Our adversary, the accuser, is working hard to turn people against you, even people you don't know. He's even pretty good at getting you to accuse yourself, to put yourself down. Why do you think politicians say so many bad things about each other? Why do you think so? I wonder if even those special people, those politicians, could be working for the accuser at times. Those accusations, those words are how the accuser runs the world. Did that sink in? It's words that the accuser uses to rule the world. Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Those of you who are believers must live by a different set of rules when it comes to the words you allow to flow from you. Words have power. Words form people's beliefs. Words drive our behavior. Words actually shape our world, good or bad. Don't ever diminish the power of words. Words move hearts and hearts move feet. Words crush. Words steal, kill, and destroy. Satan or the accuser will remind you of every mistake you've ever made. What are you going to do with that information? How will you handle your head? Ephesians 3:12 from the NLV. Our fight is not with people. It's against the leaders and the powers and the spirits of darkness in this world. It is against the demon world that works in the heavens. Our actual fight is not with that idiot saying stupid stuff on social media. It's not even with the world's leaders who seem to be running things into the ground and setting us up for indentured servitude. Sure, we have to process and deal with their words, but those people aren't the true disease that runs and ruins this world. 2 Corinthians 4:4, in whom the God of this world, small g, hath blinded the minds of them that believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them. See, this isn't talking about believing in God or believing the Word. This is an attack on your personal belief system. This is an attack on your personal belief system. That mindset you use to advance, to receive, to win, to push through until you finally get your shot. In simple terms, Satan, the accuser, talks you into a weak, self-imposed type of blindness so you no longer can notice God's superabundance. He does it through words. He does it through words. Words control your belief cycle. Words control your belief cycle. All the world's problems that you read about on your news feeds, all the unbelievable off-putting things said by politicians trying to get elected, all the fears placed in your heads by well-meaning preachers are not the real problem. It's really the accuser and his minions trying to manipulate you into missing God's second chance designed just for you. We play by a different set of rules. Now, I've said this line a few times because the world attacks believers more than regular people on the street. The world attacks you believers more than regular people on the street. The way he manipulates and controls the entire world is simply by reminding you of your past mistakes and by turning you against you. It's a brilliant plan that's worked for thousands of years. The accuser would love for you to put yourself down, thinking that you don't deserve anything good. He needs you to put the brakes on you. He'll whisper, you had it all, but you squandered it. You mishandled your marriage. You got distracted from your dream. You compromised. You quit when you should have pushed harder. You're crazy. The accuser seems to leave out the part where God promises all of us a second chance. Now, speaking of crazy, did you know that even the younger brothers of Jesus, James and Jude, treated Jesus like he was out of his mind, devil-possessed, and working for Satan? Mark 3:20 from the ISV. Then he, Jesus, went home. Such a large crowd gathered again that Jesus and his disciples couldn't even eat. When his family heard about it, that's James, Jude, Mary, and a few of the other kids, they went to restrain him, Jesus, because they kept saying, he's out of his mind. He's crazy. The scribes who had come down from Jerusalem kept repeating, he has Beelzebub, and he drives out demons by the rulers of the demons. Can you imagine that for the better part of a year, Jesus' entire family thought he was bat poop crazy? And the religious leaders spread the rumor that Jesus was possessed out the you-know-what? Jesus' family took full advantage of their second chance after the day of Pentecost, and they changed their minds. The religious leaders, not so much. James and Jude even each wrote a book in the Bible. So God's mercy is bigger than your mistakes. Now, speaking of overlooking mistakes, when my son was about 3, we lived in a small town across the street from a county jail. And the pockets in his brown shorts were bulging, and he was headed out the door like he was on a mission. Well, I stopped at him, and I said, Adam, where are you going? He said, I'm going to the jail to bail Larry out. Now, Larry was a guy who just started coming to our fellowship, but got himself into a little bit of trouble. Adam had 97 cents and pennies in his little pockets. You know, it was all of his money. It was everything to him. I loved the kid's heart. He had no idea why Larry was in jail, and he didn't care. So I took his little hand and we crossed the street, and I went with him to visit this guy. God could care less what you did because you're already forgiven. You're already forgiven. Christ paid the price for you. Why don't you forgive yourself? Why don't you forgive yourself? This next verse is Psychology 101 and an introductory self-help seminar all rolled into one sentence. Job 3:25. For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid of is come unto me. The thing which I greatly feared is come upon me. One of the first lessons Moses ever taught was from the book of Job. Actually, it was the first book in the Bible ever written, chronologically. That kind of talk is what got the children of Israel into their promised land. It'll do the same for you. What you keep running through your head, positive or negative, especially the negative, is going to happen. It may be good to listen to the words that come out of your mouth. Listen to yourself. Job had to lose everything, his family, his livelihood, and his health before he realized he had let his negative self-talk almost ruin him. But he took his second chance seriously. Job 42:10, and the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Verse 12, so the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning. Talk about second chances. Talk about second chances. Will God do the same for us? Yes, yes, yes. I just picked up a book on Amazon written by my wise friend Tony Washington. And it's entitled, Just Some Good Thoughts. And here's a quote. None of us like it when we blow it, when we fail to measure up, when we fall short of the person we know in our hearts that we really ought to be. None of us. But if you're honest, you know the only way to do better is to be better. And we accomplish that by choosing carefully what we say to ourselves. God is on your side even when you aren't. I love that. God doesn't give up on you because you mishandled what He gave you. So don't give up on yourself. Be better to yourself. You deserve it. You deserve it. Tony points out that when you hear yourself criticizing others, quote, it is a surefire indicator that you have been levying that same criticism against yourself, end of quote. If you talk about others, your self-talk must be miserable. We don't want to open that same trap door that Job fell into. I don't want to. Speak better to yourself, and you'll begin to speak better to others. You're not defined by your mistakes. You're equipped by your mistakes. You're equipped by your mistakes. You're better, faster, stronger, smarter because of what you learned. Keep learning. When the accuser attacks you with your own words, let's shove them back down his throat by turning the negative experience into a positive lesson. Let's beat the accuser at his best game through positive conversations. Like Job, let's double our blessing by controlling what we say to ourselves and about others. Let's enjoy our second chance and let's prosper wildly. Now, in conclusion, if you think about it, the Word of God is filled with second chance terminology. It's filled with it. Forgiveness is a second chance at love. Mercy is a second chance after we blow it. Hope is a second chance at a better future. Believing gives us a second chance at what is rightfully ours. Grace is our undeserved second chance. Healing is a second chance at wellness. The renewed mind is our second chance mentally. Being born again is our second chance spiritually. And the gathering together is our second chance eternally. Let's look at what the wisest man in the world once said about second chances. Ecclesiastes 9:10. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. For there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest. Solomon's telling us by revelation from God that whatever we decide to do, we should give it our best. We should give it our all. Put your mind and might into everything you touch, because there's going to be a day coming that you won't be able to do much of anything anymore. Think the grave. If you're a writer, then write. If you're an athlete, then run. If you're a singer, then sing like the wind. If you're an inventor, then test out those 1,000 ideas. If you're a healer, then find someone to heal, to help. If you're a hellraiser, well, find something else to do. I did. If you're going to take the time to do something that you're good at, then put your full heart into it, because the grave is waiting for you. Death has been chasing you down since the day you were born. Verse 11, I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill. But, time and chance happeneth to them all. The words time and chance in Hebrew simply means the impact of time. The impact of time. Solomon is telling us that time waits for no one. Doesn't wait for you or me. The lesson in this section is time will catch up to you. So go make your mistakes. Go learn from your failures. Go out there and get fully involved in your one and only life. You're going to lose at times. You're going to get thumped at times. You're going to get beat at times. But you're going to learn. Sometimes you'll come out on top, and sometimes you won't. Just keep living. So enjoy the hell out of your life. Enjoy the whole enchilada of life. Enjoy the good times and the bad. Life is both cruel and amazing at the same time. Enjoy the hell out of your second chances. Live your life. Love your life. Love life. Use your second chances wisely. You're going to need them. You're going to need them. Moses saved millions of people. Job doubled his massive income and had 10 more kids. James and Jude wrote 2 epistles that helped the early Christians handle deadly pressure. They all use their second chances. I'll bet you're going to kill it with your second chances. I can't wait to hear your incredible story. Let's each enjoy each and every second chance. God bless you all.